Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast, where we look at marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. Information relating to our discussion today and links to the video version can be found in the episode show notes. You can find them on spacemarketingpodcast.com. Our guest today is a big reason why I am here doing a podcast. He has been a mentor to me, and I am very excited to have him as a guest. As we begin the new year, we try to catch a glimpse of what the new year might bring. Our guest today is the author of Winfluence. He is a speaker. He is also a podcast host for the podcast Winfluence, and he is the creator of Marketing Podcast Network, which I am a part of. Today, we are going to talk to the influencer marketing guru, Jason Falls. Happy New Year, Jason. How are you today?
I'm great, Izzy. Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for having me.
What got you into marketing in the first place?
The origins of it probably go back to someone you know, my mother. She was, when I was growing up, when I was real little, 7, 8, 9 years old, she was the editor of the Appalachian News Express, which was the, sort of little 3 times a week daily or 3 times a week paper in Pikeville, Kentucky, where I grew up. So I kind of grew up in the newsroom, and this was back in the days when they actually had to, print out the stories on film and cut it with an X-Acto knife and use wax on the back of it and stick it on the layout page and have that thing shot in the dark room. I mean, this was, ancient days, when you think about the digital era. But I grew up around newspapers. I grew up around the newsroom. And then when I was 14 years old, Mom decided that she was going to give me chores every day of the summer. And she would leave me a list of things to do on the kitchen counter. And I had to do all the things before she got home from work that night. That was my summer job, if you will. And I got fed up with it. And she said, well, if you're not going to do the chores, you're going to go get a job. So I marched myself into the local radio station and said, I want to be a DJ. And they were like, okay, you're hired. And my communications career kind of started there. I never really embraced marketing until I was well into my, probably mid-20s. I was in public relations, I was in radio, I was in broadcasting journalism. But when I realized that the future, if I was going to have one, in at least being in leadership and, being able to earn a living and whatnot, I was probably going to have to shift and look at a more broad perspective on things. And so I started thinking about marketing at a bit broader, probably my early to mid 20s.
That's about the same time I started thinking about it. Something happens in the 20s and you really start to focus in on what it is you want to do. And you have a book, Winfluence. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, sure. So I've been doing influence. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm kind of a PR guy by trade. I mean, that's sort of after radio and getting into journalism a little bit. I kind of came back to public relations and worked in for a long time in college athletics and PR. But I've always been a PR guy. And if you think about media relations, which is kind of the core of public relations, what you're trying to do there is you're trying to work through a third party to get them to tell their audience about your thing. And if you really boil down influencer marketing, that's what it is. You're trying to find a third party to tell their audience about your thing. And so in the mid 2000s, when bloggers started to pop out and, people who were, we didn't call them influencers back then. It was blogger relations. It was, some people called it, they were mavens was a word that got thrown around back then. But it was these influential people using social media, which had sort of democratized media. You didn't have to work at a newspaper, television, or radio station to be able to publish things anymore. I was, in the middle of that and started realizing that, it's not just the local newspaper that can talk about this. It's this also local issues blogger that can help get the word out about this particular thing that I was working on a client with. And so I was kind of right in the middle of it. And I've been an influence marketing person, in that, even though the label has changed over the years, my entire career. But I've always had that sort of original, sort of pure, approach to it, that I'm just trying to find these third party people who have an impact and influence over this audience in order to be able to communicate. And when I look around, I was probably 2 or 3 years ago, as I was kind of looking around the space, I kept telling people it's not about the influencers, it's about the influence. And as I communicated that with more and more people, they that sounds right. That resonated with folks. And at the same time, I was developing a course for marketing profs. They asked me to do an influencer marketing course for them, which I developed. And once that came out, my editor, because I'd written 2 previous books, 10 years prior. And my agent actually called me up, and he was someone who wasn't officially my agent, but I'd known him and been talking to him for a while. He called me up and said, "Dude, I just saw this influencer marketing, marketing profs course you did. That's a book. Just write the damn book, dude. You're due. You need to write another one." And so he got me thinking about it, and I started thinking about it. And then I looked around and realized that nobody else was talking about the influence. Everybody else was talking about influencers. And I thought, okay, that's a unique perspective. And so let me put that into words, and I, spent a few months, on the outline and writing the book, and turned out to be, pretty decent. It probably would have sold a lot more had we not launched it right in the middle of a pandemic, but that's
right.
What happens.
Well, and in your book, you have a very clear distinction between the influencer, which are the duck lips, and
peace sign duck lips.
Yes, and the people of influence. You want to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think it's probably healthy for people to remember or realize that the mainstream media have kind of painted influencers into a corner in a way. I don't think it was intentional, but you got to remember the mainstream media, which it's one thing for us in the marketing bubble to talk about all this. But when you get outside of that, you start talking to brand managers who don't care what marketing talking heads think. And you get into business owners, especially small business owners, who don't even know that there's a whole industry of people out here talking about marketing all the time. When they turn to Fast Company or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or, People Magazine or whatever, and they're looking at some of these blogs and websites and whatnot out there for information, they're not looking at marketing blogs. They're seeing the mainstream media's take on things, and the mainstream media, whenever they talk about influencers, they talk about the bad things. They talk about the people who are buying followers. They talk about people who are airbrushing clouds into their, or out of their Instagram photos, and, smoothing out their face so that you don't see their imperfections and all that kind of stuff. They always talk about the negative things. And it kind of culminated as I was kind of thinking about this book and working on it. I realized that the mainstream media had sort of unfortunately painted that word into a corner. And what it kind of has come to mean is this very superficial, non-effective, kind of ridiculous over personality person on Instagram and YouTube and whatnot. And I called them the peace sign duck lips crowd, because typically that was the influencer that you were seeing there for a while. They would just pose, with their peace sign and their duck lips. And that was what their influence content was mostly about. Now, those types of quote unquote influencers do exist, but if you listen to the mainstream media, they make you think that that's the only type of influencer there is. And that's like maybe 5% of what's out there, because I've spent the last 10, 15 years in the digital marketing social media space working with incredible content creators who are unbelievably talented, who create content that engages and excites an audience. They build an audience that they have actual influence over. And so my distinction that I kind of based the whole book on is we've got to stop thinking about influencers, the individuals, as brands and as marketers. And we've got to start thinking about what we're trying to accomplish, which is influence. We're trying to influence an audience to take action. It might be that we get to that audience through a YouTuber or an Instagrammer that can effectively, persuade that audience to do something. But it might be other mechanisms too. And so I kind of use the book to say influence marketing without the R is thinking about how you're going to influence that audience in a very broad way. So it's about, maybe it's the Instagrammer, but it might also be, and I use this example a lot, there is about 2 miles from my house, there's a local franchise store for the parent-teacher store. So they sell school supplies, right? Their audience are, parents who homeschool, parents who are really active in their kids' education, and like to do activities at home, and teachers, right? That's their audience. Well, if you're trying to reach that audience for your local franchise store in Louisville, Kentucky, an Instagrammer with 500,000 followers doesn't mean crap to you, because less than 1% of their audience is going to even be in Louisville, Kentucky, much less a parent or a teacher. So what you have to do is think about, okay, well, how do I influence that audience to take action? Well, if you're trying to influence teachers, then you need to find people who are producing education content online. You need to find people who are in administration. You need to find people who are maybe the heads of the local parent-teacher organization that have communications with teachers on a regular basis. School counselors, school principals, right? And that's an entirely different strategic approach to influence an audience than going to some software program and saying, find me all the people on Twitter who have 50,000 followers and talk about this. And so we've got to just think about influence marketing differently, and that was kind of the basis of the book.
And it's offline and online. And one of the things that I'm really a proponent of is that marketing is a relationship. And influencer marketing is based on the relationship that people have with other people. It's not about, just throwing money at something and expecting something to happen. It's about developing those relationships.
That's very true. And I think, to kind of, put a bow around that for people, I think if you think about celebrity endorsements, most celebrity endorsements, not all of them, some of them can be good, but celebrity endorsements are very simple. It's, hey, you are someone that everybody knows. I'm going to pay you a bunch of money to stand there and hold my product and smile and say you love it. And we all kind of know, they're mostly full of crap. Some of them aren't. I've seen some that are actually, I'll share this with you really quickly. I don't know if your audience knows this, but one of the celebrity endorsement things that we like to make fun of typically in the marketing world is Shaquille O'Neal's endorsement of the General Insurance Company. But if you actually look, there's some interviews out there online where Shaq has said when he was in college at LSU and bought his first car, he couldn't afford car insurance until a friend said, hey, you should go to the General because they make car insurance affordable. And so he endorses that brand still today because they helped him pay his car insurance when he was in college and didn't have any money. And so there's some celebrity endorsements that are actually really good and genuine and authentic and whatnot. But for the most part, we get it. It's like, no, they're just paying you. Well, if you look at the way most people think about influencer marketing, it's just like that. I'm going to find someone who has a lot of followers and reaches the audience that I want to reach, and I'm going to pay them to stand there with my product and smile and say, I like this. But if you really get into influence marketing, which is, to your point, it's really more about building a relationship and trying to find someone who can authentically recommend the product or service. It's not about sponsoring one post. It's about building a relationship and having a back and forth with that creator over time so that you not only account for the reach. It's easy to go out and find somebody with 1 million followers and pay them to reach that audience. But you're forgetting the other part of great marketing communications, which is frequency. And that frequency makes a difference. We hear it all the time. Well, it takes an audience, 7 times seeing your message before they actually convert. Well, then why are you buying one Instagram post? Why are you not trying to find an Instagrammer out there that really believes in you, that you can engage over the course of 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months, and continually feed their audience with reminders of why they like you and why your product's good, because that frequency is actually going to make that influencer marketing investment become something that you get a return on rather than just throwing money at a problem for a weekend and hoping, right? So right. You're absolutely right. It's all about relationships, at least the ones that work.
And frequency is not an easy thing. It's not an inexpensive thing, but it's not an easy thing. Even if it has nothing to do with money, just getting out there. And when I first met you, it was actually a live podcast that you were doing on Tuesday mornings. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know I worked with your mom up until you launched your book. And she started saying, hey, come to the book launch.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I do that every Tuesday.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's a lot of hard work. It is.
It is. It absolutely is. And I mean, frequency is one of those things that, yeah, you can pay for it, but the more genuine influencer marketing relationships that I've had over the years are the ones where, yeah, you're going to engage the creator, and it's absolutely right and fair and just to pay them for their time and the content they create and the reach that they provide you with to their audience. But if you build that relationship over time, those paid sponsored posts or that, payment for the exchange of goods and services happens. But organically, you're baked into what they do. They just talk about you. They tag you in posts more often. You get a lot of that added value from them. I had a client not too long ago, had a 2-year relationship with a food, cooking chef type creator. And this was a kitchen appliance company. And the kitchen appliance company basically said, we're going to, engage you and pay you for pieces of content to create recipes, but we're also going to equip you with basically a brand new kitchen. They gave her all new kitchen appliances. And so it was, a healthy investment from the brand, a great benefit for the creator. And there was a contractual engagement. We want this many pieces of content from you a month, and we want to use your content in this way, and we're going to pay you for that. But aside from the contractual stuff, this woman probably tagged and talked about her appliances 20 times a month in Instagram stories and whatnot without ever being a contract or a need. And her audience over time began to realize it's not just that she's endorsing this product. This is her kitchen. These things are in her kitchen. She uses these things every day and tells us all about the smart app that makes them work. And like she's showing us what our future kitchen could look like using this product. And so it was great value for the brand. It was great value for the creator. And that frequency happened because there was that relationship, not just an exchange of goods and services.
And you can tell. You can tell when they like who they're working with and they like the product. And you can tell when they don't.
And you definitely can tell when they don't.
Yes, and it will hurt you.
It will. I love listening to podcasts where the host is reading an ad, and you can tell that they're just reading a script. They don't even know what the product is. They're just like, okay, this is sponsored by MailChimp. What the hell's MailChimp? And they just kind of, you can tell. But when someone actually, uses a product like you and I both do, your audience has heard your commercials and my audience has heard my commercials that we do for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. Well, we do that because we use LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and we know them and we use their products and you can tell the difference in the presentation for sure.
I love LinkedIn. I think it is the social platform that I'm most happy with at this point.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And, but like there was one particular podcaster, well, not podcaster, video YouTuber that I watched all the time. And he started taking on more and more influence marketing stuff. And he had this one particular partner that he didn't like. And I quit watching him.
Yeah.
Because I could tell that he did not like the relationship that they were in. And so it comes out in your voice.
It does. It absolutely does. At that point, if you're the brand, you've got to just say, okay, let's just cut ties. Let's not do this. It's not worth the investment if they're not going to be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. So it's definitely the relationship, the authenticity. It all has to be there to make it work.
It does.
Okay. So talking about podcasts, let's talk a little bit about the Marketing Podcast Network.
Sure.
You have created this thing and invited me to come along, which I am very appreciative of. And I have met all kinds of really cool people as a result. So you want to tell us a little bit about the Marketing Podcast Network?
Yeah. So we've got about 40 shows or so. And it was born from, I had my own podcast, obviously, Winfluence, the Influence Marketing Podcast. And I was on a business podcast network that promised that you would get cross-promoted on all the other shows, which I was like, oh, that's great because I need other people who listen to podcasts to know about my show so that they'll listen to mine too. And then you'll also get a share of ad revenue. And I was on that network for almost 2 years and never saw either one. And so my personality is such that I got mad and decided I was going to go start my own damn network and show them how to do it. And so I did. And it didn't come together quite that quickly, but I realized that I could bring podcasters together on a shared hosting platform, that there was the technology existed for me to be able to sell advertisements and dynamically insert advertisements into them and all that stuff. So I kind of started thinking about it from a business perspective. How can I make this a business? Not necessarily one that, brings me a bunch of profit, but one because it's kind of a side hustle passion project for me. It's not that I need to make money off of it, but I wanted it to be able to certainly sustain itself. But I wanted to literally share the ad revenue with the other creators who were helping me drive that revenue. And that was the original concept. And as I started kind of socializing that with my friends who had marketing podcasts, they were like, I want in. That sounds great. And we went from, I think, 5 original shows to probably 20 in about 3 months. And here we are about a year later, a little over a year old, and we've got about 40 shows. We're driving in aggregate everybody together, because it's a bunch of small podcasts that are strung together. It's not one big show. We've got about 200,000 downloads a month. Or not 200,000, 200,000 a year. We had 200,000 last year. We have about 20,000 downloads a month. Well, 20,000 downloads a month is about 40 insertions if you do 2 commercials a show, and 40,000 impressions is sellable. You can go to advertisers and say, hey, we can guarantee 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 impressions, and we'll sell it to you for this, CPM. So I started thinking about how to do this and how to make money through the ad network. But then I also was like, well, what about the podcasts who are thought leadership podcasts that don't want to have ads on their show? So we built a model for that type of podcaster to come in as well. And the reason we did all that is because the underlying purpose of the Marketing Podcast Network is to build a community of podcasters who are there for the sole intent and purpose of helping each other grow. And so maybe it's grow revenue, yes, but it's really also about just growing your audience size. And the way that we do that, and the way that mechanism is built into MPN, is, as you know, all of our hosts record a little 30-second promo for their podcast with me, and we actually put that in commercial rotation with all the other paid advertisements, so that each podcaster is being promoted to all the other podcasters' audiences. So for those of you who listen to the Space Marketing Podcast, you'll probably hear at some point during a commercial break, as you're listening, you'll hear me say, hey, you may know that you're listening to the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on the Marketing Podcast Network? In fact, here's Nick Westergaard. Nick, tell us about your show on brand, right? Those promos are basically advertisements for the other members of the Marketing Podcast Network, so that your audience, Izzy, can hear what the other options are on MPN. And then other shows will have your promo on them. So other people who listen to Nick's show or my show or whatever will hear, oh, there's a podcast about space marketing. That's super niche and super cool. Let's go listen to that, right? So we've built it so that we have this mechanism to promote one another. And then for people who want to opt in to making revenue through advertising, we have that option too. But we also, kind of the core thing that's really fun about it, is we have a Slack community where we collaborate, share ideas. We do, I'm going to say bi-monthly creator calls, because I'm in charge of them and they don't happen every month. So we have bi-monthly creator calls where we literally get on the phone and say, okay, how can we grow? What are some ideas? Let's brainstorm. Let's figure this out together. So that, because podcasting can be a very lonely solo pursuit, and there's not a whole lot of feedback other than going to your analytics and seeing how many people listened to the last episode. And so because we've created not only a mechanism for the number of people who listen to the last episode to grow consistently, and we've created a mechanism where everybody can share in the profits equally, not the big shows get all the money and the little shows get nothing. Everybody gets an equal share here. And we've created a community where you can turn and say, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to do video for my podcast and put it on YouTube. Does anybody have any advice? And you've got 40 people sitting there answering the question. So it's no longer a lonely pursuit for marketing podcasters, because they can come to MPN.
Well, and that's how you got me in. I wrote my book, Space Marketing, and you read it and you had me on your show. And then you're like, you should do a podcast. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. And then you're like, yeah, you should. I'll help you. And
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
did. You did.
Well, and I'm glad you did, because what I've seen from your show thus far is this really fascinating exploration into a smaller part of the marketing world, or a bigger part of the world, and looking at it through the marketing lens.
Right.
That's not out there. Like, there's nobody else really doing what you're doing, and I think that makes your show special, and puts you in an opportunity, sort of area for growth, because there are people out there in the space industry who are discovering your show and being like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. I know a lot about space. I do all of this in my job, working for these airports or spaceports and whatnot, but I don't know anything about marketing. I need that help. And now they've got a resource for it. Or you've got marketers who are interested in astronomy, space, etc., and don't have that plug-in into the industry, and now they've got a resource for it. So you're filling a gap, which is fantastic, and that's what makes for a good show.
And it has been a blast. So we're going to take a moment and do that little, sales thing that we were just talking about here. And I'm going to do our promo. So hold on to your boosters. We will be right back with Jason Falls and learn about what maybe 2023 will hold for marketing after a brief message from our sponsors. And let's talk a little bit more about what we see in the future, because, space is a big part of the future. Wow. And that's kind of why I do what I do, is because most people that are in the space industry don't know anything about marketing. They've not had to market. They had a grant process that they worked with, and the only people they really had to schmooze was NASA or an investor. So now you've got, last figure that I heard a couple weeks ago, 77 different countries now have space programs. So you went from having 2 countries, United States and Russia, to 77. And all those countries are pouring money into the industry. And it's not just, for science anymore. There's actually product coming back down that needs to be marketed. So a lot of these people are kind of getting thrown into the deep end going, what is this thing? And then space itself is getting ready to explode, and it's just fascinating. So what are some of the trends that you see in marketing in the future?
Well, the good news for people in the space world is that video and visual is sort of now required. And the reason I say that's good news for people in the space world, because people who have anything on video captured from outer space, or going to outer space, or even talking about outer space, it's just instant virality. I mean, you've got a huge audience of people out there that are fascinated with this frontier, especially now that you're seeing not just the 77 countries, but private entrepreneurs now, obviously.
Yes.
They have to have a lot of money, certainly, but private entrepreneurs are getting into it too. And so now it becomes, a measure of capitalism and whatnot. So there's a lot more accessibility. Even though it's still limited, it's way more than it was, and it's going to get better and more broad. So I think video and mastering video content is something that marketers or people in the space world who are going to be marketing things need to sort of understand. Not only is it a much more personable and personal medium to communicate a message to your audience, but the social networks where most people are consuming their content these days are prioritizing video content because it's sticky, because it's more personal, because it makes people stay on their platform more. So that's why you're seeing things like, TikTok is taking off because it's all video. Instagram Reels is sort of a response to TikTok, but also was there before and really gets people watching and paying attention. YouTube has always been kind of dominant with video, but keep in mind that YouTube Shorts is now there to kind of compete with the TikToks and the Instagram Reels of the world. And there's a real high level of priority that I would put on YouTube Shorts and paying attention to that, because YouTube is owned by Google. Those are the two largest search engines. The low-hanging fruit's going to search. Guess which videos they're going to find first? YouTube and YouTube Shorts, right? So Think about that in terms of your video marketing. I think video is definitely something that you need to invest some time and attention in. The good news is the technology is so advanced these days that you literally, not only can you just take a video on your phone, you don't have to have fancy editing skills or anything like that. You can just do it on your phone. It's fine in most cases. But if you go to like Canva and other places out there, Canva's a great app online, a website where you can go and say, I want to choose a template, and you just choose a design you like, and I want to choose a social video, and it puts it up there, and you just upload your video and drag it and drop it. Now it looks fancy, and it's got some rudimentary editing things on there too that you can master in a few minutes.
And they have space videos, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got accessibility is much better than it ever has been. The ease of use, the technology's there, and so it doesn't have to be intimidating. And I'm one who, it's interesting that I say that, because I have resisted video for a long time, because I'm an old radio guy. I had a college professor who liked to say, well, Jason, you've got a face for radio, and he would say that about everybody. It's an old joke. But I'm a radio guy, and I'm an audiophile. I love the sound. I don't care for video. I don't care for video editing, etc. Winfluence has done, I think, one video episode so far. I'm changing that in 2023 because I have to, because the only way you can really get in front of people these days is with video to promote things. And so I have been that person who was hesitant because, video editing takes so much time, and it's a new technical skill that I don't have. So I've been in your shoes if you're saying those things, and I can tell you the gap between what you don't think you can do and what you can do is very small, and you can bridge that gap pretty easily with the technology that's out there today. So video is big. I would bet big on video, and fortunately in this industry, in the space industry, your video is already 10 times more viral and better than everybody else's.
Well, and a point about the video quality is the fact that if it's too polished, that goes against you.
Yeah.
Having it be a little raw, makes it more real, because you're not paying some,
It's a weird kind of continuum, because yes, if a brand throws out a super slick, polished, cinematography driven thing, a person, a regular consumer is going to come across it like, ad, they're just going to float by it.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're just doing janky videos on your phone and you're not stable and you're going all over the place and there's not a little bit of thought put, to making it look and sound good, then that can turn people off too. So there's this weird sort of continuum. There's a sweet spot in the middle where it needs to be a little produced, but it can look a little raw too, and that's okay. But, keep in mind, people are thumb scrolling through this content quickly. So you need to capture their attention right away. For whatever reason, people love text on video. They love stickers and flashy bells and whistles that make them stop and look at things. So you got to kind of take that into consideration. It's okay to be conservative, certainly, but at the same time, you want to be able to get their attention, and then you want to be able to keep their attention. But you're only going to be able to keep their attention for so long. Videos past about 60 seconds, typically there's a big drop off, and people don't finish it, unless the content's fantastic. Which I've literally gone up to the webcams, or not the webcams, but maybe it is webcams. Whatever the cameras are that are on the space station, and they just they're just showing the Earth as the space station circumnavigates the globe. I'll turn that on and watch that for an hour just because it's soothing and calm. But typical social media consumers are going to watch, anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds, and then they're going to drop off. So figure out how to do the video and then figure out how to tighten it up and make it really compact and attention getting.
And have a story. The story is important.
Yes.
You know, if you are just doing video for the sake of video, you know, welcome to everybody else. You have to have that story to bring them in, and it's important.
Yeah, somebody, a marketer and a senior level executive at a big software company, and I don't have his permission to kind of, you know, tell everybody his name and everything, but he said this to me the other day in conversation. So I'm just, this is a pretty well-known guy. He told me about social content. He said the biggest mistake that brands make is they post just to post. You need to, you know, publish content when you have something to say. And if you don't have something to say, if you don't have a story to tell, then don't. It's okay to be silent for a few days while you figure out what story you need to tell or what your next thing is. And so I've even, you know, told some people kind of in translating that, you know, if your content calendar for your brand is, okay, we have a content calendar and we're posting, you know, something every day on all of our social networks or 2 or 3 times a day on all of our social networks, you're just posting to post. Unless you're like, we're posting this narrative, this story that takes us, the consumer, through a journey over the course of the week or the month or the year or whatever, and there's a purpose for all of those daily posts, which most people are not going to be able to say they actually really have a purpose, because that would be unusual and really complex. But unless you do have that, then you're just posting to post. So maybe scale it back a little bit and work on quality over quantity and make sure you're posting when you have something to say, not just to get people's attention.
You want to have something that educates, inspires, and entertains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can do all
that's
three,
the secret recipe.
You win.
You win. You also have a trend, cost efficiency for marketing. You want to tell me what that's about?
Well, I mean, I think everybody, you know, has been reading the tea leaves and is concerned about the economy, right? A lot of brands going into 2023 are tightening up their belts and their budgets, and so cost efficiency has to be something that people are paying attention to. And the way that translates for me, and is one of the reasons why I'm at Cipio in my full-time day job now, is that our perspective on influence marketing is that instead of going out and finding social media influencers and starting out there with people who don't necessarily know you but will promote you, our philosophy is let's be more cost efficient with how we're spending that advertising dollar or even that influencer marketing dollar, and let's start with the community we already know. Let's start with our customers. Let's start with our fans and followers on social media. Let's start with our employees. Let's map that community socially and see, well, which influencers are already here, right? Which ones that we already know or already know us, because that's going to be a more authentic story for them to tell. And so that would be the influencer marketing version of being more cost efficient, is instead of going out and, you know, finding mid-tier and mega influencers to pay tens of thousands of dollars to, let's invest, you know, a couple $1,000s a month in software and find people who we already know who are willing to do it for either free or very little, right? Because that's going to help us make that marketing dollar go farther. In other avenues, I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think you're going to see a lot more people going to, you know, sort of the phone raw video as opposed to hiring a video service to come in and produce things for you. You're going to have to see a lot of that cost efficiency because the marketplace and the economy is what it is, and we're all a little nervous that are we going into another recession, or are things going to get worse before they get better? And so when people have that, you know, nervousness out there, then the belt straps have to tighten a little bit, and that means we've got to be more creative about how we spend our dollars.
And on the other side, I think creativity is going to be a really big trend too. And next year, or this year, end of this year, beginning of next year, you have a couple of things that are happening that are going to be really cool. One of them is the dearMoon project, which it's a Japanese billionaire that is taking 8 people around the moon in Elon Musk's Starship. So that's happening at the end of this year. So all these people that are on this starship, they are going to be they're creatives. They're artists.
Awesome.
They're musicians. They're photographers. They're people that can translate what they are experiencing. And the ultimate influencers, they can get it out there and share the story of what we're doing. So you have that. And then you also have Artemis II that will be going around the moon as well. And I'm already seeing a lot of space making its way into commercials for like perfume and makeup and all that, and cars. And they're doing some phenomenal studies. And, you know, a lot of your companies are going up to the International Space Station and doing stuff that, like, for example, Estee Lauder is doing some sustainable plastic alternative study up in the International Space Station. So sustainability, climate, and creativity, I think, are going to be the three things that are going to be launching here soon.
Those are good ones, and it excites me and almost scares me a little to think that creative people are now going to be exploring space, because what they can come up with in that environment it's really exciting to think about what the potential is. It's going to be fun to see.
And they have the voice. And where, you know, some of your astronauts and things that go up there, it's really hard to put into words what they're experiencing, and especially for the common person. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to, or, you know, a way that people can get in touch with you or with the Marketing Podcast Network, which is a real easy one. And plus, we're going to have all that in the show notes as well.
Sure. I mean, marketingpodcasts.net is where you can find the Space Marketing Podcast, along with other great podcasts. You know, we really do have a nice array of shows and hosts that are really entertaining and engaging. We've got everything from, you know, SEO last week with Sean Swaim, who talks about the latest in search engine optimization for those of you who are interested in that. We also have PR Talk. Amy Rosenberg does a great show strictly about public relations, which is fantastic. You know, we've got a lot of great shows. I mentioned Nick Westergaard's On Brand earlier. He's got a fantastic show where he talks to brand managers about how they, you know, take their markets and their brand to market and their products to market. So it's really a nice wide variety, a cornucopia of marketing-oriented shows for you to choose from. So I'd encourage you to go over there and explore that. Add that to your queue along with Izzy's show, of course, which you are already subscribing to. And then I'm Jason Falls everywhere. You can find me at jasonfalls.com. I'm Jason Falls on all the social networks. There's a politician in North Carolina with the same name who hates me because I own the first 5 pages of Google, and he can't win. But, you know, that's what you get when you go up against somebody who's an internet marketing guy. And Cipio, if you're interested in, you know, that sort of community outlook at influence marketing, I'd love to talk to you about it. So reach out to me. You can go over to Cipio, that's CIPIO.ai, and check us out and do a demo. And there's a pretty good chance I might actually be on the demo with you, or just email me and we'll figure it out, and I'll show you the tool myself. That's me.
So you want to leave us with some thoughts to consider as we head on into this new year?
The best advice I've ever been given was by my uncle Bo, who was you know, my mom's brother, who, when he was about, I think he was 9 or 10 years old, he got hit in the nose with a baseball, broke his nose, and he walked around with his mouth hanging open because he couldn't breathe for a couple years. And he always had that kind of agape look on his face. And he once turned to me, and I don't know where this came from. He just said, I got some advice for you. I said, what is it? And he said, never look up with your mouth open. And that was it. So there you go.
But look up.
Absolutely. Look up. Just keep your mouth shut.
Yes. Yeah, keep your mouth shut. All righty. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to our journey this year. Please subscribe before you head on over to my YouTube channel for bonus footage. Links to the YouTube and other social media channels can be found on spacemarketingpodcast.com. A special thanks to Jason Falls with Winfluence for joining us today and sharing his journey in marketing. Be sure to check out his link listed in today's show notes. I hope that you have found this podcast useful for your journey as you reach for the stars.